People often believe that the saddest words are spoken at a funeral. I once believed that too, until I discovered that the saddest words are sometimes spoken long before death arrives. Many years ago, my phone rang. It was someone I loved. The voice sounded familiar, but something was different. Not fear, not sadness, just urgency. The kind of urgency that quietly asks to be heard. Brother, I'm coming to Lagos to see you. We need to talk. It is very important. I smiled. Not because I ignored those words, but because I believed there would always be time. Time to meet, time to listen, time to understand. I answered gently, "Tell me on the phone." There was a brief silence. Then came the reply, soft but firm. "No, this is not a phone conversation." Those 7 words crossed the distance between us, but I never knew they would travel with me for the rest of my life. I told her, "I'm waiting." But sometimes, the greatest mistake we make is believing that waiting and making time are the same thing. Life has a strange way of convincing us that the people who love us will always wait. It whispers, "Finish today's work. You can visit tomorrow. There is still plenty of time." And without realizing it, we begin to believe the lie. The days became busy. Morning became afternoon. Afternoon disappeared into night. Dreams demanded attention. Responsibilities stood at every door, and I answered every one of them, except the one that mattered most. The phone continued to ring, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, sometimes just before the day came to an end. Every call carried the same hope, the same gentle determination, the same desire to meet. "Brother, are you free today?" "Not today. Maybe tomorrow." Tomorrow. Such a simple word, yet it has buried more conversations than silence ever could. Tomorrow became the lie I kept believing. There was no anger, no complaints, no accusation, only patience. The kind of patience that only love can give. Each time the answer was accepted. Each time another day was chosen. Each time hope remained alive. Looking back now, I often wonder whether the heart knows what the mind refuses to see. Perhaps that is why the calls never stopped. Perhaps love was trying to arrive before time ran out. If only I had known that every postponed meeting was carrying me one step closer to a goodbye I never imagined would come. There comes a moment when the voice of someone you love begins to change. Not enough for the world to notice, but enough for your heart to ask questions. Sometimes we hear the change, yet we refuse to believe it. One day, the phone rang again. The voice was softer, slower, almost as though every word required strength. Then came a question I have never stopped hearing. "Brother, if I were truly sick, would you come and see me?" The question caught me by surprise. I apologized. I told myself she was only worried, that everything would soon be all right. Hope can be beautiful, but hope can also make us blind. It convinces us that tomorrow will repair what today has neglected. A few days later, another call came. This time, there was pain in the chest. Then another. There was coughing, then blood. The words became heavier, but somehow my faith in tomorrow remained heavier still. I said, "Please go to the hospital." She answered quietly, I already have. I said, follow the doctor's advice. She agreed, but there was something she wanted more than medicine, more than tests, more than treatment. She wanted one conversation, face to face, brother to sister, heart to heart. Looking back today, I now understand that sickness was not only fighting her body, it was racing against time, and time was winning. Still, I believed there would be another phone call, another visit, another tomorrow. I did not know that tomorrow was already slipping away. Life rarely tells us when we are about to see someone for the last time. If it did, perhaps we would hold them longer, listen more carefully, and leave fewer words unsaid. One afternoon, the phone rang again. The voice sounded weaker, but the love inside it had not changed. Brother, I want to go home. I want to see our father. For a moment, I became the older brother again, trying to sound strong, trying to sound hopeful, trying to believe everything would be all right. I said, go home, spend time with him. I'll be there soon. We'll see each other there. She answered quietly, all right. She began the journey home, carrying more than a travel bag. She carried hope. She carried pain. She carried an unfinished conversation that still belonged to us. When she arrived, she did what she had always done. She visited family. She greeted neighbors. She smiled at old friends. No one could see how much strength those simple moments were costing her. But the phone kept ringing, not to complain, not to blame, only to say the sickness was getting worse. I listened, I encouraged, I comforted, but I never imagined I was listening to the final chapter of a life I loved so dearly. There is a burden that many people carry without knowing it. It is the burden of believing there will always be one more visit, one more conversation, one more embrace, until suddenly there isn't. As the sun disappeared behind the hills, one promise remained alive. I'll come soon. Neither of us knew that promise was already running against eternity. There are phone calls that interrupt your evening, and there are phone calls that interrupt your life. That evening, I was not alone. I was sitting quietly, sharing an ordinary moment, never knowing it would become the last ordinary moment I would ever have. Then, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. For a brief moment, I hoped it was her. It wasn't. It was my younger brother. His name appeared where hers should have been. Before I answered, something inside me became strangely afraid. Brother, his voice trembled. There was no greeting, no ordinary conversation, only silence struggling to become words. Then, the words finally came. In a single moment, the world I knew fell apart. The promises, the postponed visits, the unfinished conversation, every tomorrow collapsed into one unbearable truth. She was gone. I cannot remember how long I sat there. I cannot remember who spoke. I cannot remember who tried to comfort me. I only remember that something inside me broke, and it has never been the same again. People say grown men do not cry. They are wrong. A brother who realizes he will never hear his sister's voice again does not cry with his eyes alone. He cries with his soul. That night, I hated my success. I hated my busyness. I hated every tomorrow that had stolen one yesterday after another. If regret had a face, I was looking at it. If sorrow had a name, I was carrying it. Before the night was over, I had already begun the longest journey of my life. Not a journey towards someone I loved, but a journey to say goodbye to someone I thought would always be waiting. There is a journey no one ever wishes to make. A journey where every mile whispers the same painful words: "You are too late." The road stretched endlessly before me. Villages passed by. Children played beside dusty paths. Women swept their compounds. Life continued as it always had. Only mine had suddenly stopped. Every passing tree became another memory. I remembered the little girl who never stayed in one place, always laughing, always running, always filling every home with more life than the house itself could hold. She could turn an ordinary afternoon into a celebration. I remembered how we played football together. She never cared that people thought it was unusual. She simply enjoyed life. I remembered the little songs she loved to write. Whenever she finished one, she would bring it to me. "Brother, read this one." I always did. She smiled every time I smiled. Looking back now, I realized she wasn't just writing songs. She was writing pieces of her beautiful heart. The closer I came to home, the heavier the silence became. Then I arrived, but not to the welcome I had imagined. The house was full, not with celebration, but with mourning. Faces that once smiled at me could no longer lift their eyes. No one needed to speak. My heart already knew. Then my father looked quietly toward my younger brother. His voice was calm, heavy but calm. "Take your brother, show him where she sleeps." No father should ever have to say those words. No brother should ever have to hear them. I followed quietly. Every step felt heavier than the one before. Then I saw it. A mound of fresh earth. Simple, silent. I stood there, unable to move, unable to speak, unable even to ask for forgiveness, because the one person I needed to speak to could no longer answer. I did not only lose my sister that day, I lost the conversation that never happened. I lost the secrets she carried across hundreds of miles, hoping to place it into my hands. And with her, that secret returned to God. Some graves hold a body, others hold a question that will never be answered. I was standing before both. People often say that time heals. I have learned that time does something different. It teaches us how to live with what it could not heal. The years passed quietly. 1 became 5, 5 became 10, 10 became 15. The world kept moving. Children grew. Families changed. The seasons returned again and again. But one thing never changed. There was not a single day I forgot that phone call. Not a single sunrise when I did not wonder what was so important that it could not be spoken over the phone. Some questions never grow old. They simply learn to live beside us. Whenever I heard laughter, I remembered hers. Whenever I heard a song, I remembered the little girl who would write her own lyrics and bring them to her brother with hopeful eyes. Whenever I saw a football, I smiled and then I cried. Because memories have a way of arriving without warning. For many years, I carried something no one else could see. It was not a burden placed on my shoulders. It was a promise placed inside my heart. A promise that only two people ever truly understood. One remained on earth. The other had already gone home. There were days I wanted to give up. Days when the weight of regrets felt heavier than hope. But every time I remembered her voice, I kept walking. Not because the road was easy, but because love does not abandon its promises. Then one day, after 15 long years, through tears, through prayers, through struggles, and through God's unfailing grace, the promise was finally fulfilled. Not in the way I had imagined, not with her standing beside me, not with her laughter filling the air, but fulfilled all the same. At that moment, I understood something I had never understood before. Love does not end when a heartbeat stops. Real love keeps walking, keeps remembering, keeps waiting, keeps fulfilling promises, even when the one who inspired them can no longer see them. Some promises take a day, some take a lifetime. Mine waited 15 years, and when it was finally fulfilled, the first name that filled my heart was hers, Ifeoma. May your gentle soul continue to rest in perfect peace. The conversation we never had became the story the world will now remember.
Izintaba ziyakhuluma